The last recorded words of the king of Ugarit were not a declaration of war. They were a desperate, terrified plea for help. He wrote, "The enemy ships are already here. They have burned my towns. They have done evil things. My troops are far away. I am left alone." Shortly after this message was carved, the king's city was burned to ash. The tablet was literally baked in the fires of its destruction. The plea for help was never sent. By 1177 BC, the greatest, most invincible empires on earth, the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, were systematically hunted down and slaughtered. Cities were erased. Written language was entirely forgotten. The force that destroyed them left no names, no homeland, and no mercy. History simply calls them the Sea Peoples. And to this day, we still don't fully know who they were or where they went. To understand the sheer scale of what was erased, you have to forget the dusty ruins you see in museums today. In the late Bronze Age, the Mediterranean wasn't a collection of primitive tribes. It was the first truly globalized world. It was an era of superpowers. For 300 years, the Big Three controlled the known world. You had the unstoppable military machine of the Hittite Empire in the north, the legendary Mycenaean Greeks in the west, and the sprawling godlike wealth of New Kingdom Egypt in the south. They didn't just conquer, they communicated. Kings called each other brother. They signed complex peace treaties. They ran highly advanced international supply chains. To make bronze, the metal that built their entire civilization, they needed copper from Cyprus and tin from as far away as modern-day Afghanistan. Just like our modern world relies on microchips and oil, their survival depended entirely on this fragile, interconnected web of trade. If one massive link in that chain snapped, the entire machine would grind to a halt. By the year 1200 BC, these empires were at the absolute peak of human achievement. They believed their walls were impenetrable. They believed their gods would protect them. They had no idea that a storm was already gathering in the Western Sea, and that within a single human lifetime, almost everything they had built would be reduced to ash. The first sign of the apocalypse wasn't a massive declaration of war, it was silence. In a highly connected world, news traveled fast, but around 1190 BC, the sprawling trade network simply stopped responding. Ships carrying vital copper from the island of Cyprus never arrived at their destinations. When emissaries were sent across the water to find out why, they didn't find trade disputes or political blockades. They found smoking ruins. Cyprus, the economic beating heart of the Mediterranean, had been hit by something entirely unprecedented. It wasn't a rival empire looking to conquer, govern, and tax. Whoever did this had no interest in ruling. They came from the sea, they slaughtered the population, they burned the infrastructure to the ground, and then they vanished back into the water. Paranoia began to spread across the royal courts of the ancient Near East. The surviving clay tablets from this exact moment in history read like the frantic final transmissions of a sinking ship. The king of Alashia wrote desperately to the king of Ugarit, warning him that unknown enemy ships had been spotted off the coast. The response he got back is one of the most chilling documents of the ancient world. The king of Ugarit confessed that his own troops had been deployed elsewhere, his navy was gone, and his cities were completely defenseless. He wrote, "Be aware of this, my father. The 7 ships of the enemy that came here inflicted much damage upon us. 7 ships. That is all it took to paralyze a major kingdom. This wasn't a traditional war. The massive, slow-moving infantry and heavy chariots of the Bronze Age superpowers were built to fight other empires on open battlefields. They were utterly useless against a swarm of fast, ruthless, amphibious raiders who struck without warning and disappeared before a defense could be mounted. The The kings of the earth were suddenly fighting ghosts, and the ghosts were moving closer. Those 7 ships were just the bleeding edge of the swarm. Within a matter of years, the ocean itself seemed to turn against the ancient world. The first true superpower to be wiped off the map was the mighty Hittite Empire, located in modern-day Turkey. For centuries, the Hittites were the undisputed masters of chariot warfare, commanding a massive, iron-fisted military. Their capital city, Hattusa, was an imposing mountain fortress, heavily fortified and considered completely impregnable. But when modern archaeologists excavated Hattusa, they didn't find evidence of a political collapse or a slow decline. They found a massive, uniform layer of ash. The entire city had been burned to the ground so intensely that the mud brick walls had literally baked into hardened ceramic. The Hittite Empire, a civilization that had rivaled Egypt for supremacy, simply ceased to exist. And the swarm kept moving south, consuming everything in its path. Down the coast of the Levant, the great trading hubs fell one by one. Megiddo, Hazor, Ashkelon, cities that had stood for thousands of years, were abruptly and violently destroyed. To the west, the legendary Mycenaean Greeks, the same civilization that inspired the myths of Hercules, Achilles, and the Trojan War, were utterly broken. Their massive, stone-walled palaces at Mycenae and Pylos were torched. The evidence left behind in the dirt tells a story of pure panic. Archaeologists have uncovered hoards of gold and silver jewelry hastily buried under the floors of houses by people hoping to return for them later. They never did. They found bronze arrowheads deeply embedded in the ruined walls of cities. Most chilling of all, they found unburied skeletons left to rot right in the middle of the streets, weapons still clutched in their hands. This is the detail that makes the Bronze Age collapse so terrifying. In normal ancient warfare, a conquering army takes over the city, enslaves the survivors, and crowns a new king. But the Sea Peoples didn't want to rule. They didn't occupy the palaces. They slaughtered the inhabitants, burned the infrastructure to the bedrock, and moved on. It was an extermination event. By 1177 BC, the entire northern and eastern Mediterranean was a smoking graveyard. The globalized trade network was dead. Millions were displaced or killed. Only one superpower was left standing, and the swarm was heading straight for the Nile Delta. By 1177 BC, the world was literally on fire. The Hittites were gone. The Mycenaeans were ashes. The unstoppable swarm of the Sea Peoples had reached the final prize of the ancient world, the borders of New Kingdom Egypt. Pharaoh Ramses III knew they were coming. He had seen the traumatized refugees pouring in and heard the frantic reports of annihilated kingdoms. He knew that his traditional heavy chariots would be entirely useless if the Sea Peoples were allowed to land their full force on Egyptian soil. So, he made a desperate, brilliant tactical decision. He laid a trap. He didn't send his navy out to meet them on the open water. Instead, he allowed the mysterious fleet to sail directly into the shallow, muddy mouths of the Nile Delta. Once the black-sailed ships were heavily bogged down in the reeds and completely unable to maneuver, the Egyptian army sprang the ambush. Archers lined the shores, unleashing a massive, continuous rain of arrows into the wooden decks. Infantrymen with long spears pushed the invaders back into the water, while Egyptian vessels rammed and capsized the trapped fleet. The battle devolved into a brutal, close-quarters slaughter in the mud of the Nile. If you go to Egypt today and look at the walls of Ramses' mortuary temple at Medinet Habu, you will see the official story. The massive stone carvings boast of a glorious total victory. They show the pharaoh crushing the invaders, taking thousands of prisoners, and saving Egypt from the apocalypse. But modern archaeology tells a much darker, much more depressing story. Egypt survived the battle, but they did not survive the collapse. The victory was a complete mirage. The Sea Peoples had already destroyed the intricate global supply chains that the Egyptian economy relied on. There was no more copper arriving from Cyprus. There was no more tin. There were no more wealthy trading partners left alive to buy their gold. The Egyptian treasury was completely drained by the immense cost of the war, and their international power evaporated overnight. Within a few decades, the invincible new kingdom began to fracture, rotting from the inside out. Ramses III had managed to win the final bloody battle of the Bronze Age, only to inherit a dead world. So who actually broke the world? For over 3,000 years, that single question has haunted historians. The terrifying truth is that the Sea Peoples probably weren't some unstoppable, demonic military force. Modern evidence points to a massive, decades-long mega-drought that triggered earthquakes, famine, and systemic crop failures across the Western Mediterranean. The Sea Peoples were likely a massive, desperate confederation of climate refugees. When people are starving and their children are dying, they don't negotiate. So they don't respect borders or peace treaties. They take to the sea and they take what they need. The Sea Peoples didn't destroy the Bronze Age because they wanted to rule it. They destroyed it because they were desperately trying to survive it. When the dust finally settled, humanity was plunged into a violent, centuries-long dark age. The world didn't just lose its gold and its empires, it lost its mind. In places like Greece, the complex systems of administration completely collapsed, and the population literally forgot how to read and write for nearly 400 years. This is exactly why the Bronze Age collapse remains the most terrifying event in human history. It holds a dark mirror directly up to us. We look at our modern world today, our incredibly complex globalized economy, our total reliance on microchips, international shipping routes, and digital power grids, and we think we are permanent. We think our society is simply too big to fail. But the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, and the Egyptians believed the exact same thing. The ruins of their palaces are a silent warning. All it takes is a massive break in the supply chain, a shift in the climate, and a desperate, starving population to realize that civilization is never truly permanent. It is only ever about 3 missed meals away from total collapse. The past is rarely dead, it is just waiting to repeat itself. If you want to uncover more of the dark, forgotten truths that history tried to bury, subscribe to No Past Land. We have a lot more digging to do.